you a fan of English electric Type 3 traction, i.e. the Class 37? Well, if you are, this video is for you. Hello everybody and welcome to Clydebridge station, where today we're going to review the 3 other Class 37s that are in my fleet. And one of which, this one here, is a pretty appropriate addition to the fleet, and which you saw me purchasing at the Glenrothes Model Railway show. As is well known, my layout is dominated by Class 47s, and there are actually 30 of these at the moment, with number 31 due later this year, unless I find another one. And I've also got a Class 60 locomotive as well. Now that's actually not on the layout at the moment, that's down in one of the storage shelves. But I've got put under a little bit of pressure from a mate of mine to get a Class 37, and what I've done now is end up with 4, because there's going to be a twice daily service from Clydebridge to Fort William, and in the great tradition of this layout, where there are no diesel multiple units at all, and before anybody goes and thinks you'll get a Class 158 on there one day, Robert, that's about as much chance of that happening as there is of me flying to the moon, and I'm scared of flying. So the layout will be dominated, or the Fort William train will be operated by Class 37s, because at the time that my layout is set, 1989 to 91, Class 37s were the only diesel locomotives cleared for the West Highland line, and indeed Class 37s had been the exclusive traction on the line since 1987, when, perhaps to commemorate the passing of an era, a Class 27, in order to get it back down to Glasgow for its final withdrawal, piloted a Class 37 on an aluminium train. So maybe that was just to commemorate the passing of an era, who knows. But anyway, we've got 2 Bachmann and 1 Lima Class 37. You'll see detailed differences between the 3 of them, but obviously the age of the locomotives will explain that. I'm going to do them in the order I've purchased them, so let's go back down. 37428 David Lloyd George is a Bachmann example bought from a private seller on eBay, and you'll notice immediately the locomotive has snow ploughs attached, but also has a coupling in the centre. Now the person that sold me this locomotive was not the original owner of it, and he tells me that was the condition he received it in. I don't know how the previous owner to him has actually managed to do that, get the snow ploughs on, but I am not complaining. It looks very good with the snow ploughs on. I like it. Let's give you some background to the Class 37/4 story though, before I briefly talk about 37428. As part of the programme to eliminate steam heating on British Rail, 31 Class 37s from the second batch, which had the central head code boxes, were converted at Crew Works to 37/4s, and these used an AC alternator like that used on the Class 31/4s and the Class 47/4s. The 31 machines were allocated to Eastfield Depot, which had 17 of them, 37413 and 2225, Inverness 37414-21, and Cardiff Canton 37426-31. As I've said, these were converted as such to operate on lines that were not cleared for the likes of Class 31s or Class 47s, and therefore could allow the elimination of steam heating on British Rail. And they also meant that the Scottish region could do away with the 3 ethels. That was the Class 97s, 97250-2, the 3 Class 25s that were converted to non-self-propelled train heating units. 37428 was one of the 6 allocated to Cardiff, as the name suggests, David Lloyd George, and like the other 30, originally carried large logo blue livery. This would have operated on the line from Cardiff to Bristol, and it would have also been used on the services between Shrewsbury and Aberystwyth, and Pwllheli, the locomotive hauled services that were required, and it would have also worked from Manchester to Cardiff on there. With the incoming of the sprinter units, Class 156s were eventually able to cover diagrams on the Manchester and Liverpool to Cardiff service, and these machines were transferred to other sectors, and this one, as you can see, was moved to rail freight. It carries the rail freight petroleum decals, as does 60062 on my fleet, and this locomotive by this time would have been allocated to Immingham in that livery. However, in 1991 it did also see use on the West Highland line. I've got a book with a photo of it operating a Corpac to Moss End service in 1991 in that livery. So this locomotive is an appropriate fit to Clydebridge. 37428, like the other 3 Class 47s, will be working the twice a day Fort William Clydebridge service. Empty stock will be hauled in by a 47 or the 60, but the 37 will do the honours to and from Fort William. Now, the one thing you'll notice immediately on 37428 is it's got the cab nose aerial here. We've mentioned the snow ploughs, and it's got the horns here. Now, they're not on the Lima locomotive, but I'll talk about that shortly. And we've also got here the fan grille. The livery looks very crisp indeed. Now remember, this is a previous Bachmann tooling, so it's not the current Bachmann tooling, which has some slight differences to it, but it's nevertheless a very good model indeed. And actually, I now do regret taking my time to get Class 37s on the fleet, but there we go. But it's a very well presented model indeed, and once the other platforms at Clydebridge Station are up and running, you'll see 37428 and the other 37s working to and from Fort William. Incidentally, this locomotive will also be useful with its rail freight livery for pushing the rail cleaning wagon as well. It might occasionally be used to bring in empty stock for an intercity service from Palmedy Depot. But it's a very good machine, at 37428, David Lloyd George. If I come along a little bit, I mentioned already there were 31 Class 37/4s. This was the first one, Mary Queen of Scots. Not only was it the very first Class 37/4, it was also the very first Class 37/4 to lose its large logo livery when, in 1988, it was painted into intercity livery, unbranded, as you see here. Similar to that you will have seen on 47508 or 47831 or 2. It carries the name Mary Queen of Scots, which it received in a ceremony in 1986 at Linlithgow Station. And although carrying a passenger livery, and it was intercity because the numbers are there rather than below the cab window, it did occasionally get used in this livery on freight working, mentioning in the same book by Andrew Vine's Diesel in the Highlands that 37428 is in. There is a photo of this locomotive working on an oil train to Oban in the winter of 1988. So again, it would have been used on freight workings in that livery. Now this actual locomotive later on had a slight change to its livery when the the fleet number is put below the cab windows as per 47550. Now that meant it got converted therefore to the main line livery. It then surprisingly was repainted into rail freight distribution livery. I say surprisingly because many of the 37/4s that worked the West Highland line, especially after the coming of the 156 Sprinters, they were repainted into the main line livery because they would work the intercity sleeper train and charter traffic. So it was a bit of a surprise that this got distribution livery. It actually still exists and carries the large logo blue livery, and it was used by Northern on hire from direct rail services with a 4-coach push-pull set fitted with Blue Star coupling, multiple working control on the Cumbrian coastline. I'll pop a video up in the corner somewhere. But a very good machine that as well, 37401, Mary Queen of Scots. Now this is this very special one. It doesn't look at it at first, but it's a Lima one, and it's the one that you saw me buying at the Glenrothes Model Railway Show from Jim Scobie, or as I call him, James Scobie Esquire, at Scooney Hobbies from their stall at the Glenrothes Model Railway Show. And it's 37099, and it's got the appropriate name for the layout, Clydebridge. It carries the rail freight metals livery, which is similarly carried by 37423. However, this is a Lima model, and I think you can tell that by how it looks a bit more plasticky than the other two machines. Split head code boxes and the connecting doors. So this is a phase 1 machine. Nevertheless, the livery is very well accurate and it compares pretty good to 37428, the Bachmann offering. The only things that I would say about it is obviously it looks rather silvery there, silver and whitish there when you compare it to 37428, which looks a bit more accurate. And likewise there, but the livery is otherwise captured very well. The cantrell stripe here looks a little bit thick, but it's still actually correctly proportioned. The only other thing to note is if you actually look very carefully at this, these radiator grills here are actually a little bit smaller than on the class 37/4s. And if I go along to 37428, it does make it clear. So they are a little bit smaller. Bear in mind this is an unrefurbished class 37. Whether that has anything to do with it, I'm not sure. Class 37 experts, please come and tell me. The depot crest is that of Motherwell TMD, and you can see how big the coupling is on this locomotive. But it's a good locomotive. Jim actually hardwired this to DCC, and so it, along with its three sisters, 37423 is actually in a storage box at the moment as a film. It will be working its way up to Fort Bill and back. Now if I turn the camera round here a little minute and just show you, whilst this is a Lima model, it's over 30 years old, have a look at that. It's actually still got like the Blue Star symbols, electrification warning signs, which are also present on here. So it's actually quite a good model nonetheless, and I know a lot of people spoke highly of the Lima version. Obviously the windows are a different size and there's no horns applied to it. And the roof, however, we can get it on here. Bear in mind again, this is an unrefurbished example. The roof pattern does differ from that on the 37/4s. I suspect, although again class 37 experts can confirm, that this is maybe because this was an unrefurbished locomotive. The class 37 refurbishment plan saw phase 1 locomotives like this being numbered in the 375XX series, 377XX series. The Phase 2 machines that were refurbished would have been in the 37/4 series, but those that were classified 37/5s would have been numbered in the 376XX series, and those in the 37/7 series would have been numbered in the 378XX series. Confused? Blame British Rail. The detailed differences between the two locomotives are quite clear, because you can see that the doors there, the cab rails are different from how they are on this locomotive 37401. And also the positioning of some of the windows is slightly different as well. Things look a little bit higher up on this locomotive than they are on here, but as I say, this is a refurbished example, so that may have something to do with it. Inevitably, with it being a Lima machine, the fan doesn't operate, and it's just a complete moulded unit. It's an imitation fan. And I should add as well, that was the previous Bachmann tooling, and this is the current Bachmann tooling. So there we have it, folks. That's the three latest Class 37s to arrive, and this is the fourth and final one. There'll be no more coming after that. I'm going to be getting more 47s, and possibly 31155 or 31159, as both those 31s were actually spotted at Motherwell Depot one morning in 1991. There you go, there's how they contrast, by the way, with a 47, and you can actually see that if I move that out of the way, you can see the 47701 looking out of the shed onto 37099, and no doubt the 47's asking, what the hell are you doing here? 37s will actually be rare on the depot here at Clydebridge, because obviously with these all being freight locomotives or freight sector locomotives, they'll actually be working to and from Motherwell Depot mainly, so they will be very rare on here. Just before I do wrap up this short video, I just want to briefly explain to you what happened to some of the Class 37s after the introduction of the Sprinter units. Now, they came onto the West Highland line on the 23rd of January 1989, and the number of 37/4s required for the West Highland line was reduced from 17 to 11. By this time they were all allocated to the rail freight sector, the Eastfield ones, although duties on charter work and intercity sleeping cars remained. 3740, 7A and 22 were transferred on the 25th of January to Cardiff Canton Depot to help with the continuing shortage of the Class 155 units. And when those units were brought back on stream, they were moved to various rail freight depots such as Tinsley and Immingham. 37412 was moved down to Lera Depot in Plymouth to replace a Class 50 on China Clay traffic in Cornwall, and it was later joined by 37414 from Inverness. 37411 was the fifth of them to go, and it went down to Tinsley Depot. Now this actually left more than enough Class 37s to handle the rail freight traffic, and that then saw the Class 156 Sprinters dominate the West Highland line. Once they were introduced on the Far North line, 37414, as I say, moved to Lera Depot for China Clay traffic, and 37415, 6 and 9 were moved to Thornaby Depot. They were used on Teesside Chemicals traffic, and 37420 went that way as well. And as already mentioned, the sextet at Cardiff Canton were moved far and wide after 1991. So there we go. That's your Bachmann and Lima Class 37 locomotives. What one's your favourite? You tell me in the comments below. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this short video, especially if you're a Class 37 fan, and I do admit to actually liking them a little bit. But you won't see any more than the 4 that I've got at the moment on here. Unless a certain friend of mine down in Shrewsbury decides to put more pressure on me to get another one. Well, the next video you'll see on this channel, there'll be a couple of videos. I'll be at the Cooper Model Railway Show, and I've also got the July update coming up as well. And you never know, we may actually have one of these locomotives running into, hopefully, a relay platform 2 or 3. Anyway, whatever you're doing, please, thank you very much indeed for watching, and do take care of yourselves, won't you, and enjoy your lessons. We'll see you soon. Cheerio!